welcome to KennyRoy.com. I'm Kenny Roy. This is the Ask Videomail for the week of May 4th, 2015. May the 4th be with you. I didn't want to say that. It just snuck out. Sneaked out? I think Conan and Jennifer Gardner put that to rest. Don't know what I'm talking about? Look it up. The Ask Videomail is your chance to get your question in character, animation, or performance answered in a video just like this one, but I need your question if I'm going to answer it right. Yes, so please send your questions to webmaster@kennyroy.com. I go through all the questions, and I answer the ones I think will help the most people. Sometimes I'm wrong. There's no such thing as a stupid question, and it is the best way to get the most out of the site. That is true. I am not wrong about that. Please, if you've never sent in an Ask Videomail question, it is painless. It's actually quite invigorating. I would think. Get your question answered in a video just like this one. I almost just launched back into the intro. Sometimes if I'm not paying attention, I'll probably just do that. Video just like this one. But I need your question I'm going to answer, so please. Okay. Anyway, I feel a little goofy today. I don't know why. Long question, and it's a good one. It has to do with workflow, and you're going to enjoy it. That's a guarantee. Check it out. All right, so there's a lot to talk about with this question. First of all, let me answer the first part, or the last part first, which is, do you think this is a good workflow? No one, listen, that guy has so much animation experience. No one could say that any workflow that he's using is not good. There's something to be said about any workflow that is used at the highest levels. That is, that's just like the baseline. So let's just start with that. Backing away from that, though, it's not so different from tempo if you think about it, because what a pose is, and basically what he's saying is, let's jump in and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so let's say you have your graph editor and you have a keyframe. Oof, I just need something that's a little bit more exciting than that. There we go. You have a keyframe, and pardon me. You've got your keyframe going, and what you're trying to do is get the strongest pose possible. Well, yeah, you don't want your key to be, your tangent to be, adjusted so much that you get something that's wildly different than what you had before. I mean, that kind of seems like it's obvious, but there is a method of applying, some tweaking to these tangent handles that gives you a little bit of stuff for free. And I would say that don't be so afraid that you're going to actually break your animation off of your keyframes being your extremes, that you stop tweaking your tangent handles, because everything can be totally experimental. If you've ever seen me work on a walk or a run cycle, you know that I kind of am a little bit reckless with my tangent handles. I'm almost kind of a little out of control with my tangent handles. I'm just seeing what looks good. Normally, I hit play and then I make my changes. Like I'm watching the animation back and just like pulling and twisting tangent handles and just seeing what happens. And it's a much easier way to work than, I think it's a much easier way to work than being so worried that you're actually kind of like breaking something you're not supposed to. There is a lot of congruency between this and tempo. Here's why. In tempo, we kind of decide what are these moments that are important. Okay, so if it's someone like crouching down and then jumping up in the air and catching a ball, well, obviously that moment of anticipation where they're totally crunched down, the moment, the frame, the time of that is important. The apex of their jump Like, so how high they get, that's an important moment. That's an important pose as well. So that's where these things kind of like line up, because the apex of a jump is going to line up right there at the top, right? And that's also where you're going to try to figure out when that moment happens, when you're timing it with tempo. Apologize. Right? Sorry about that. Let me just mute. Okay. So we're kind of going for the same thing. The only difference between tempo and wanting these extremes is that tempo, once you start going forward and blocking with tempo, you also are going to, let's say this is the moment where, notice how I've completely transitioned over to saying moment, not pose. You know, notice how this over here, this is the moment right here. This is the moment when you're totally, you know, crunched down in anticipation. In tempo, as you move forward with blocking, it's not adding an in-between if you put something right here. Not really, because what you're doing is you're defining the speed, and the speed is the timing, right? The speed at which he pops out of this this crunch down thing. Whatever pose you're going to plug in on that frame doesn't really matter. Doesn't really matter when you're making this decision. How fast is he, you know, he crunches down and then pops out of it, or crunches down and jumps out of it? Like, does he explode from that moment, or does he kind of just like almost slow out or ease out of that moment? Who knows, right? So in tempo, you're trying to create the strongest kind of impression on your audience with the timing before you even worry about pose, and before you even get into any of the difficulty of you know, that fight of posing and timing. Okay, so the only thing that I would say is kind of different is that in tempo you are going for those extremes, but what would be called an extreme in posing, I would translate into a important moment. And typically those posing extremes line up with those. Another example is, how much are you going to overshoot like if someone jumps up and you know, here's like a wall, and they run and they jump up, you know, how much over that are you going to land? Okay. This is the apex of their jump, right? But you also kind of want to define the moments before and after that to kind of see how much it feels like they are in control of that jump. Because if it's a perfect parabola and they land, it kind of almost feels like they were, you know, shot off the ground and they're almost out of control and then they're landing. But if you plateau this a little bit and put a little bit of importance on the moments before and after that apex, okay, and get something a little bit more like this, then it almost looks like they jumped up there and kind of have control of their body, and then decide when to sort of like land and like almost return to earth. It's a very different feeling that you're going to give your audience if you animate that two different ways. And that's why tempo is exciting, because with tempo you're allowed to kind of just like rough it in and then experiment. Grab all this, one frame this way, this one frame that way. Okay, let's try two. Two looks like garbage. Let's try 1 and 2. I don't know, maybe mismatch is weird. All right, let's try 2 and 1. Let's go nuts, 3 and no frames offset. Let's just get rid of this one altogether. 3, 2. All right, this is okay. Let's go all the way back. 2 and none. All right, and now 1 and 1. It turns out one frame, you know, just one extra frame in the air on either side is enough time in the air to give the impression you want. And here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different experiments. And I probably, if I wasn't talking out loud and working really fast, I probably could do every single one of those little tests to see what looks the best. in the time that I was describing it just now. I would have done 7 different versions in the span of about 1 minute, and when I'm done and I settled on 1 frame extra of time on either side of that apex, when I settled on that, it would be with the confidence that I had actually made exhausted all options and had done this right. So to compare that to what Victor Navone is saying, he's kind of saying you want to define those poses and not let Maya. So if this is your extreme, you want to define that pose, and not by using a tangent handle adjustment have Maya all of a sudden somewhere over here make a bigger extreme or a more extreme pose than the one that you sort of explicitly were going for. And that's, to me, that's kind of another way of saying when it comes time to posing and you're trying to match those moments you made with tempo, make sure that you're matching them correctly and you're not letting Maya take over. So we're kind of saying the same thing. It's not obviously it's not the exact same thing, but there is a lot of congruency between those workflows. And the guy has so much experience, you kind of can't argue with what works. Ah, man, the focus on this camera is like a mystery to me. I focused it, and now it's on 13. All right, so I'll check in with you guys in a couple videos, and I'll say like, okay, it's on 13 still. For some reason, it's not focused. Anyway, that'll do it. That's a great question, and I really appreciate when you guys send them in. If you haven't sent in a question, it's the best way to take advantage of the site. Really, there's still no other resource out there like that where you can send in a question and then like a professional animator makes a video, just like boom for you. Come on, take advantage of it, guys. Everyone do it. Let's jump in here. This is the address to send them to. You haven't forgotten that. It's the same as it was 15 minutes ago, but there it is. All right, I've had a lot of fun. My name's Kenny Roy. Good luck with your animation. As always, rock on.